Yeah. So just to quickly set the stage, I want to give you my favorite example. I want you to mentally think with me what is under this translucent cover on in my hand. Maybe some of you have some guesses, but probably not very clear, right? But then if I hold my hand and to sense its shape, right? Now you can maybe have a better guesses in mind, right? Maybe some of you got it right, that this is like a wine glass, right? But probably most of you or all of you will think this is a wine glass made of material, glass, right? That's a natural guess. But if I strike it with a steel fork, actually it's made of material plastic. So yeah, we can very easily get it wrong. And here is a wine glass made of material glass. Cheers to Maryland Robotics. Yeah. So yeah, from this simple example, you can tell that our human perception, we need to make use of all the sensory data, senses to perceive objects in the world. Also, same for robotics, right? So then let's go back to one object, this example object. So why I'm interested in multisensory object modeling. So if you want to, when we see an object like the wine glass or a plate like this, we're interested in multiple aspects of it, right? For this object, it has a certain color texture, it has certain material property like ceramic, it has a certain 3D shape. So we are interested how it looks, right? Maybe from a different viewpoint, from a different lighting conditions. And also we're interested in how it sounds, right? Maybe at a different impact location with different force. And also we're interested in how it feels, right? We might use our hand to sense its, surfaces and at different surface locations, also from different contact orientations. And of course, we also are interested in how it behaves, right? Under different types of interactions and in different tasks. So it's clearly very important that it's very important to modeling objects in a multisensory way. However, if we look at prior data sets, representative object data sets like ShapeNet, so it's synthetic. It's good in the sense that there's some variation in geometry, but it's less realistic in terms of color texture, and also it only focuses on visual appearance. And also, I'm sure this community is very familiar with this YCB dataset, right? People are using this real object datasets in robotics. It's good in the sense, definitely it's real, right? And also it's multi-model, but every object can be a little bit different, right? There can be different versions of object. And also there can be challenges in inventory, shipping, especially back in the pandemic time, right? So is it possible that we think about what is the underlying physical properties of these objects and then try to virtualize these objects? So that's our idea. And our idea is that we want to virtualize these real world objects and using some implicit representation to model their intrinsic properties into some new representation we call object file, motivated by some prior study in cognitive science. Then, if we query this object file implicit representation by extrinsic parameters like the surface striking locations and where you see the object, the lighting conditions, and also where you touch it, then we can render the corresponding visual appearance and impact sounds and tactile readings of objects through this object file implicit representation. So before I talk about how we achieve this, I want to first talk about why this is useful. So we built a data set called Object Folder. So it's a data set of about 1,000 multisensory neural objects. And for this data set, for each object, it's a uniform, object-centric and implicit representation. And also the data set is easily accessible to the community as a standard benchmark for multisensory learning with vision, audio, and touch. And also it can be platform agnostic and compatible to different virtual environments. So if the multisensory simulation for these neural objects, if they are realistic enough, then we can then transfer the models learned on this neural object, virtual objects, into the real world directly. And actually, we show that learning with our virtualized objects, we can transfer the objects to the world, generalize and transfer to the real world, objects' real world counterparts on 3 challenging tasks, including scale estimation, contact localization, and shape reconstruction. And I want to emphasize that here we're only learning with this simulated virtualized objects, so we directly transfer to the objects' real world counterparts. So here, just to highlight one of them, here's an example of doing shape reconstruction using vision and touch. So we collect tactile readings around the object. Then we sample a sparse point cloud from the collected tactile images. and then we combine the visual information and the sparse point cloud, then to use a point completion network to reconstruct the 3D shape of the object. So you can see that in this task, vision provides the global context, right? And the tactile signals give you the precise local geometry. And here we are learning in simulation, and we directly transfer the learned models to real-world object. So that's one application. And like I mentioned, every neural object is an implicit representation, right? So which we call object file. Here's some more details. So basically, the high-level idea is that it contains 3 subnetworks. It has a vision net, it has an audio net, it has a touch net. For vision net, basically, I won't go to the details, but the idea is that for vision net, we model, the 3D locations in the object coordinate frame and model lighting, explicitly model lighting conditions, and also using volume rendering and build an object-centric neural function for the object to represent its appearance. And for audio, we basically build a differentiable impact sound modeling framework to take the model the frequencies, dampings, and gains, and using using model synthesis, we synthesize the impact sound. And for tactile, we model the contact orientations, the geo penetrations, and also the tactile map locations, use them as input, and then we use a tactile simulation framework, a TACSIM, and we trying to render the geosite, simulated geosite images. So basically, that's like one neural object, and we model 1,000 neural objects in our dataset object folder. So here's a visualization of the 1,000 neural objects in the dataset under different camera viewpoint and lighting conditions. You see that contains common household objects of diverse categories. And here are some examples of the simulated audio data. Here is a YCB mug, we virtualize it. It is of material type steel and of certain scale, and here are the simulated sound at different impact locations. And here's some examples of the tactile readings for a sample object. Here's a T-pad. You can see that when we're touching the outlet of the T-pad, we can see that the different tactile readings, the geosite tactile readings, when you touch at the different orientation depths and orientation angles and penetration depths. So these neural objects are great, right? And we have shown some good results that we can, learning from this simulated data and then transfer to the real world. But all this multisensory data I just talked about, they are still, obtained through simulation, right? If we look at some objects, for example, for this one, if we listen to the simulated audio and the real recording, actually you can see there are still large differences, right? And especially in the high frequency component. So we also need a real data set of multisensory data in order to, to calibrate the gap between multisensory simulation and the real multisensory data capture. So we also introduced a data set called Object Folder Real, basically that contains multisensory data collected from 100 real-world household objects. And we designed a tailored data collection platform for each modality. Basically, for vision, we scan the 3D meshes of the objects in a darkroom. And here some examples. We record high-definition videos of each object rotating in a light box for these 100 objects. That's for the visual part. And for audio, we build a professional anechoic chamber, and we design this object platform, and we strike the objects to collect their impact sounds. And we collect impact sounds by striking the object at 30 to 50 different locations for each object with an impact hammer. Here are the audio data. And for tactile, then we equip a Franca Amica Panda robot arm with a geosite robotic finger. And then we also collect tactile readings at exact surface locations where the impact sounds were collected. Here are some examples of the tactile data in the dataset. So then, building on top of this real multisensory data collected from 100 real objects and the 1,000 multisensory neural objects I talked about, we also introduced the benchmark suite, and where we tackle the different types of object-centric tasks. Apart from the 3D reconstruction tasks I just talked about, there are some other tasks for object recognition, including cross-sector retrieval, like contact localization and the material classification, and also object reconstruction tasks like 3D reconstruction, surface sound generation of dynamic objects, and this cross-model generation, and also some object manipulation tasks like grasp stability prediction, contact refinement, surface traversal, and dynamic pushing. So we hope the data sets and the benchmark suite can enable further research on multisensory object modeling and their different types of applications. So I also talk about we collected this kind of multisensory data from these 100 real objects, right? So another cool thing that we can do is that we can also not only do sim to real, but now because of the collected multisensory data, we can now even do real to sim, right? If we already have this accurate real multisensory data capture from the real objects, then we can actually train a differentiable multisensory simulation model. We're trying to invert the process to learn the actual object parameters. So that's the idea. We can do some differentiable inverse rendering. So here's just an example where we doing differentiable model sound inverse rendering. We're trying to recover, using a framework called Deep Sound. We're trying to recover, just based on learning from this real impact sound recordings. We're trying to learn the Young's modulus, Poisson's ratio, the density, the shape of the objects, just based on this real multisensory recording, the impact sound recordings. And here's the model actually we use. We parameterize the shape and also the physical properties. So we model Young's modulus, density, Poisson's ratio, and also the audio synthesizer. And then we, in a fully differentiable way, we trying to learn the shape and the material properties just based on the impact sound recordings from the real world data set. And then after using this framework, and we can then use it to infer physical properties and shapes of real-world objects, right? We show that we can do different types of inference tasks leveraging this real to sim framework. We can infer their material parameters, their geometric shape, and some impact positions, etc. And imagine how this can be useful for robotics. Imagine robots can navigate and also interact with objects in the real world. It'd be great that they can directly, in a fully differentiable way, and they can automatically uncover the object's shape and the physical properties, which can be very useful, for downstream manipulation tasks. And here's an example of the inference tasks we can do using our framework. Here is the impact location prediction. Here's an example of the impact sound, and then we can predict using differentiable inverse render. You can predict the impact location, the surface likelihood distribution. Here I'm showing the visualization of the surface likelihood distribution of the impact position on the object surface. Right? It's very important to know where the impact happens if the robot is interacting with objects in the world. And also, this is just mono audio, single channel audio. It's collected by a single microphone there. Yeah. So also we can, because sound usually, because it's coming from interactions, especially for robotic interaction tasks, you have some tools, you have some objects you interact. So it's a composition of different sounds, right? So for example, we have also tried that we want to separate object sounds from robot interactions, because the tool and the object strike each other, and the resulting sound is always a composition of two things, right? The sounds made by the tool and the sounds made by the object. So how can we separate these object sounds for robot interaction? So for example of separating object sounds that we have looked at using a differentiable impact sound rendering framework. So here's some example results that we can, using a microphone to record, the impact sound, interaction sound, but that's the composition of the sound of the fork and the sound of the mark, right? Then we use our differentiable framework, we can actually reconstruct the sound. This is the original sound recording, it's a composition. You can see there are also some noise in the yellow kind of circle. And then we can actually synthesize the deloy sound and also separate the fork sound and the sound of the mark, to understand the physical properties of different types of objects in a fully differentiable way. So here's one application. Here is another application that we have explored. That is, we want to see whether we can use different types of sensory data for more complex robotic manipulation tasks. So here we want to investigate the respective roles of vision, audio, and touch and what model we should use, to fuse multisensory information, what's their role in the actual robotic manipulation tasks. So here we perform an in-depth study that we want to explore how multisensory object feedback can be useful in challenging real-world manipulation tasks. And we equip this Franca robot arm with 3 different sensors to enable it to see, to hear, and to feel. In order to make it to see, we equip it with a third-person view camera. And in order to enable it to hear, we have a contact microphone to receive acoustic signal through interaction. And also we have a geoside robotic finger, geoside sensor on the fingertips of the gripper in order to sense the contact geometry and also the forces through this tactile sensor. And then we design a multisensory self-attention model called MALSA. We use it to combine the visual signals, tactile signal, and acoustic signals, and pass through the convolutional neural networks for each modality originally, and we use self-attention and to combine these modalities, and then we use the model outputs the action, the predictions over a discrete action space for 2 tasks we tackle. One is dense packing, and the other is pouring tasks. And we use imitation learning to learn the correct action sequence. So just taking the pouring task as an example, a pouring task is a kind of difficult task, right? Imagine that in our everyday activity, sometimes we want to pour some tea from one teapot to the teacup, right? So this is also a multisensory experience because we might want to pour some tea, and we change the positions of our fingers on the handle of the teapot, right? You might hear the change in the pitch of the sound, right? That actually indicates the water levels in the teacup. That can also tell you when to stop pouring, right? And also you can feel with your fingers there's some change in the center of mass of the teapot to tell you how much tea is left in the teapot, so you can stop pouring at the right time, right? So here we instead of using the actual water, the tea, because it's kind of dangerous for robots, right? So we use beads as a replacement of water for the safety of the robot. So the task setting is that we want to pour some tea, a certain number, from the yellow cup to the red cup. So the robot pours small beads from one in-hand container, as shown in yellow, and to the fixed container in red, up to some specific level. And the goal is that we want to pour like 40 grams of beads into the fixed container from different initial amount of in-hand container. So here are some results. So we compare our model with the model using only visual information and all the 3 modalities. So you can see that we have a scale at the bottom to measure, the amount of the weight of the poured beads in the red cup. Here are the results. You can see that the model, if we use only vision, actually the differences are very, very fine-grained, right? You don't know the robot doesn't know when to stop pouring to stop at the right amount of 40 grams. But the model using vision, both vision, audio, and touch, it can actually stop at the right moment, about around 40 grams, and achieve the target level. And go ahead. For tactile sensor, it's a sensor on the grippers. For the geoside, it's a vision-based tactile sensor. Yeah. Touch is we're using geoside touch sensor. Basically, it's a vision-based tactile touch sensor. It's like an image. Yeah. That's showing on the right. Yeah, at the bottom for the left row. So that's a tactile signal, and in the middle, that's the contact microphone, the audio signals. And also we have the vision from the third view camera. So quantitatively, we also, microphone is at the bottom of the red container. Basically, you can sense the vibrations when you pour the beads from the yellow cup to the red cup. And you can see that using only vision, it's has a much larger error, mean weight error, and as you add. Yes, because this is a long hard task. Yeah. I won't only trust audio, right? I have to combine them together. Yeah. Yeah.
It all depends on how I can set.
Exactly.
I have more comments later.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And also, here it's more showing that if we want to, combine these different sensors and how are they going to, help in this kind of more slightly long horizon task, want to pour some beads. Vision is more important. As I will show in later examples, vision is actually very important in the first stage when we are trying to align the two cups. So here that if we want to pour to the right amount of beads, that you can see that quantitatively combining three modalities will achieve the best performance. And yeah, here is actually an example that we are trying to interpret to take a closer look at how our model leverage all the three modalities at different stages of the task. So we actually, because we are using a self-attention based model, so we can visualize the attention scores as a model, robot accomplishes task, right? So here at the beginning, you can see that the robot actually, if we look at the attention scores, initially, if we want to pull the beads, robot needs to align the containers, right? To align the yellow container and red container. So here, actually, vision is the most important. Actually, audio and touch doesn't matter too much. Here, it's mostly using just vision because I know the attention scores of vision is very large. And then the next stage is that some beads starts to drop into the cup. And you can see the container also tilts because the center of mass changes. And as more beads drop to the red container, you can also see stronger signals in audio and touch, and attention also shifts to these two modalities at this stage. And then it starts to pour more beads. And after pouring beads for some time, the robot arm must stop pouring, at the right moment, right? Otherwise, it will overflow. So the last critical decision is when to stop pouring to retrieve the copy. So as you can see from this attention curves, and also the key observation at this moment is that you can hear the volume, of and the pitch of the sound actually becomes lower as more beads are poured to the red container, right? So that's also, you can also see the attention scores of audio actually increases, and that's kind of the critical decision factor for the robot to stop pouring. So here is just another task. I'm just quickly showing a demo that we also leveraging these different modalities like vision and audio and touch to tackle this task dense packing. So because imagine that you want to put some object, especially this kind of object like a glass, to some packed box. You want to make use of different modalities, so to carefully to place it into the the box so that it won't break, and also it can be compactly placed in the box. So here we're also using the tactile feedback and also the acoustic feedback and the visual information to successfully to place this glass into this packed box. Okay, so that's about this manipulation tasks. So in the end, I will just quickly describe something that we are currently also exploring and our ongoing work. We're also exploring that how we can use generative models to for more robot learning, because one key motivation is that, as I described, that in those multisensory data capture, when we're in object photo real, we collect multisensory data for 100 real objects. Just imagine we want to scale it to like 10,000 or even a million, like ImageNet scale. It's very hard, right? Because you really have to have people to collect this kind of data. So it's really hard to scale this multisensory data to collect this data. So one idea that we're currently exploring is that can we actually using like multisensory generative models, right, to generate data, maybe some learning from some data, and then we can augment, multisensory data to get a more larger data sets. Currently, we are exploring whether we can augment tactile data sets through generation and to enable it to be more robust in different types of downstream tasks. And also along this line, that actually. My student Colleen has also talked about in lightning talk today, and also he will be in the poster section later in the afternoon. That we are exploring that we can using no-dimensional generated flow to shape rewards in reinforcement learning. So it's kind of also along the line that we can use generative models to generate some modality and to help shape the rewards in real reinforcement learning to help robot learning. So so maybe I'll just stop here. So basically today that I talked about some of the research that I have done in the past, and I'm interested in related to multisensory object modeling, but definitely that's not the only part about multisensory. There's also other aspects of multisensory. There's spatial aspect. Our space is also multimodal, multisensory. So we're very interested by exploring, we're very interested in how to better capture multisensory data, how to model them using the right simulation tool or using the right representations, and also different type of creative multimodal and creative and cross-modal applications. So I'm happy to answer any questions and talk more offline. Yeah, thanks for your attention.
Yeah, really nice talk over here.
Yeah.
Over here.
Oh, okay.
A really nice talk. I was curious about the bead pouring.
Uh-huh.
I understand that you used multi-sensor fusion with the tactile and the acoustic and the vision. My question is, are you using feedback?
Feedback from what?
From those sensing modalities. So in the control world, when we think about how to control, in this case, the level of, I think the weight, right? 40 grams, I think you were going for. So one might consider designing a feedback process that regulates how many beads flow in such that you hit the desired goal of 40. My question is, are you using feedback to do that? Or if not, how are you controlling how many beads go in?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very good point. If we can use feedback, they can be more active. They can more intelligently use the multisensory data. For now, we are basically just training an imitation learning framework. It's like supervised learning. We directly just collect this data, and at each point we fuse the data to make a prediction where the robot to move to train using imitation learning. So we didn't use the feedback at this point. But I think it's very interesting to explore that how to use the current status to tell the sensor maybe how to collect better data, to help to guide, how many beads to pour. Currently, it's totally just based on the perception, whatever data is available, and to predict when to stop and where to move for the robot gripper. Good question.
Hi, Doctor.
Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. It was very interesting to learn about multisensory. We often restrict ourselves to perception, so it was interesting to consider the audio and all the aspects. I just have a basic question regarding the audio. I think you were talking about the microphone, the one which you are using. I was wondering, like a lot of objects, you were hitting it with a hammer and recording the audio. Does it affect on the type of hammer we use, or like the noise which we collect when you use different type of hammers, or you, for few cases, you used a fork? So how does that affect the methodology?
Yeah. So that's a very good point, because it does matter a lot, because audio, when we collect data, it's always a composition of two things, right? If the hammer actually makes sounds, then you get there's noise from the hammer. So data collection, actually we use the impact hammer. That's very, very dedicated made. It's kind of expensive hammer that you actually can just simulate the impulse basically, and also it doesn't make sound itself. Almost. So it actually just capturing the impulse sound for the object. So that's the sound in object folder where we collect the impact sound. But in real world, like the examples we're showing, if we are doing using contact microphones, we are collect this from some contact microphone and robot manipulations. It's usually definitely it's going to be the sounds of two objects, and that's why it's important to to doing separations. Sometimes even it's also there's some noise from the environment. We need to do some denoising. So that's kind of two things that we can do data collection in a more controlled manner, but also we need ways to handle the composition of real world object interactions.
Just to add on that, you were doing the beads experiment.
Yeah.
I was wondering how the tactile works in that case. What exactly do you measure for the bowl or something?
Yeah, the tactile basic feedback basically is on the grippers. Because you have some starting number of beads from the one container, there's some beats in the red containers, basically the gripper will control, how to rotate, the container, when to rotate, and also you will sense the, center of mass for the in-hand container, so to stop rotation or to stop pouring. Yeah.
I have some questions.
Sure.
Okay, so first of all, do you know that for haptics, audio, and video, what happens in your brain in higher level animals has the same architecture? Do you know that? Has the same abstract architecture by experimental evidence. Vision, sound, and haptic have the same.
Design perspective.
From real experimental
real
evidence with humans, since 82 and 62 for vision, and then for sound, and then for haptics, we do know that the same abstract architecture applies to, that's what Andrew Ng called the one learning algorithm hypothesis. Why is that important? It's because when you try to fuse sensory data, if you know that there is a common abstract architecture, then you can map feature to feature, you can do it faster. But the question I have is the following. You're talking about manipulation based on sensors. How are you going to do that if you don't consider simultaneously the problem of sensing and manipulation? Meaning, what sensing is important for the task and what part of the sensing, the question that Derek was asking you. I mean, if you come to the lab, I'll show you can do pouring the beads on a plastic cup with a hand so that it doesn't slip and you don't squeeze the cup. Okay? And that's not a vision problem. It's a totally haptics problem. And it's haptics in not just in how I pull but also how I sense how much force I put. Okay? And this problem, no matter what sound you put or other things, you won't have anything. Okay? Yeah. So it's important to understand in a sensing and manipulation action, what is important for what.
Yeah.
And the second question I have is when you do your hammer and you hit it, all right? Do you understand structural mechanics?
A little bit, yeah.
So if depending on what structure I have on the cup and the way where I hit it, the sound is going to come different.
Yeah.
I can show you experiments of that. So we really have to be very careful when we take data from different sensors and try to treat them as decoupled information versus how they are coupled with the structure of the object, the material properties of the object, and all that stuff. All right, so here's the question. Are you trying or are you planning to use whatever data you collected to the joint problem of sensing and manipulation? That's what matters. I need to understand how do I do a manipulation in a feedback sense and what sensory data I use and how do I translate this to control? It's not open loop, right?
Yeah. I think that's very, so thanks for the point. That's very interesting. Definitely, that's a direction that I'm indeed interested into exploring, because I think we are doing data collection, but how to do data collection is one thing. We are collecting, there are a lot of constraints, hardware constraints and human constraints, but we want to really collect the right data.
And that's what I meant before when I interrupted you and said, you have to treat the sensory differently, okay? Because you can let the damn thing run and then it will overrun.
Yeah.
Or you can even let your hearing overrun and then it will overrun also. So it's a question of what do you do as you observe the sensory to try to get accurate to the 40 grams or something, right? It's not open loop.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I'm also interested in sensor design, because now the sensor we are using is not perfect, right? Because if you have some sensor that's already give you maybe I can take them.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. Maybe I'll stop here.